Here is a picture I drew a couple of months back there, brothers and sisters, of Michonne looking very badass there with her katana. Kind of a cross between the comic book and the actual TV show style. So if you like it and more, remember to follow me on all the social networks. The Walking Dead, Season 4, Episode 3, Isolation.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Dead Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review. This one is for Season 4, Episode 3, tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. And let me tell you, this really so far has been a season for me that started out with a whisper, but is really just kind of climaxing, and maybe that's not the proper word, but climbing towards, hopefully, a big bang. Because really, in the last episode, we wound up seeing Rick kind of start to realize that you cannot just be a pacifist in this world. He gave Carl his gun back, started carrying his gun as well himself, and really you could just kind of see that he realizes he's going to have to kind of come back to somewhat to what he was before. He doesn't want to lose himself again and push himself too far and lose who he's tried to become or who he is, this good person that's inside. So this episode starts out with a bang. The last episode, of course, left us off with Karen and David. Both their bodies had been dragged. They had been taken outside by some mysterious person and had been burned. And Tyrese had found them at the end. And of course, we know he was intimate with Karen. So that's how things left off. That's where things pick up, right in that little sort of walled off courtyard inside the prison. And Carol is there, Rick is there, Daryl is there, and Tyrese is there. And Tyrese, this is where we get to see this mild-mannered type of guy. We get to see him just go crazy, motherfucking balls to the wall, and excuse my language, but that really is what it was. I mean, he came into his own today because he is just enraged, and he is just screaming, "We're going to find out who did this, and now," and Rick's like, "We'll find out. I know how it is. We lost people." And he kind of gets up in Rick's face. Daryl goes to say something to him, try to comfort him, like, "Hey, you got to calm down, dude." And he turns and puts Daryl up against a wall, right? And then Rick goes to come at him, and Daryl goes and holds his hand out, like, "No, it's all right. I understand, man. He's grieving, it's tough. He just lost this person he loves." And so we wind up seeing this, and of course, he's thinking they were murdered in cold blood, so Tyrese is, he's visibly upset, and he has good reason to be. So then he winds up going and turning and coming at Rick like that, right? And Rick's like, calm down, and he tells him, "We've all lost people, And then Rick goes and he says, "She wouldn't have wanted you to act like this, right?" And that just sets Tyrese off, and just Tyrese, boom, just nails Rick, right? Now, Rick let him get a free one in, because Rick's down on the ground, and Rick's like, all right, and he kind of looks up at him, and Tyrese goes and takes his big ass and boom, pummels him again. And once that second one went and Rick's head went down, he came up like Rocky fucking Balboa, after he has to go and fight Mr. T or Apollo or the big Russian, any of them, because he just gets that look in his eyes, and he gets up, and Daryl grabs Tyrese first and holds him back for a second, but then Rick goes and just frickin' nails him, and you're thinking, all right, he's going to go and give him a lick to let him know who's boss, who's in charge, right? But no, Farmer Rick, man, has come out of his shell and come back into his own, and he really is just kind of like this crazed rageaholic, because he comes at him and just boom, 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 and then when he's on the ground, man, he kicks him, and then he gets on top of him and starts just fucking pummeling him, And it reminded me of when Shane beat the shit out of Carol's husband so bad he could hardly even walk in the first season. That's what thoughts were. Anyway, there was a lot that happened in this episode, so I can't get too deep into things. But basically, the bottom line is Tyrese is pretty upset, and now he's pretty bloodied and bruised and fucked up. So we see a little bit later on, he's over there digging, and Tyrese is digging a grave, of course, for Karen and for David, and we see that guy Bob Stuckey, the guy from the first episode, the bald drunk that I don't really trust too much, and he comes out and basically is trying to lend him a hand, get him to look at himself. We see Tyrese from the beating he took from Rick, his whole left eye is just swollen shut, and he's like, "I ain't doing nothing until these graves are dug," So Bob winds up picking up a shovel and helping him. And then really, I mean, the episode was just action-packed in a lot of ways, because this really is, it's called Infected, and it's because they tried quarantining people, and and basically everybody who was in Cell Block D has now got symptoms of this flu, this super flu, this bug. So they're being, of course, held in a separate cell block, and we have to be careful who goes in and out and seeing them. They wind up basically having to cordon off the kids and, of course, the older people because they're the ones that are most susceptible to something like this. And more or less what we wind up finding out is that they're going to have a little council meeting, and they find out that they're going to have to go and get antibiotics, but the closest place is this veterinary college about 50 miles away. Daryl and Michonne are going to go and try to find a couple others to go with them. They're going to go on a run, right, just as soon as they can. So then we wind up going and seeing just kind of how everybody's sick. I mean, even Glenn is sick, right? And he winds up having to go in there and get quarantined. That little girl Lizzie, the one that the two daughters that their father was killed, was bitten and turned in the last episode, they're put in a quarantine. So we really kind of see, this is really like the enemy from within. I mean, it's really, especially for a germaphobe, I guess, this would be crazy. I mean, you think about it, it's dangerous outside, it's dangerous inside. So we wind up getting to this scene as well that's a little further along in the episode. Carol is, I think she's kind of going off the rails to the crazy train, and you'll find out by the end of this review why I say that. But she goes and there's a little exchange between her and Rick because she's using this water pump that they have, but something's broke with it and there's mud in it, and she's going to have to go outside the fence to go and fix it. And then Rick's like, we'll do that tomorrow. It's tomorrow's problem. Let's focus on what we can do today. So later on in that episode, as everybody's getting prepared to leave and everything else and go on this run and everybody's sick and people are tending to them, Carol goes and decides to go outside the fence, all by herself. No backup, no gun, no nothing, right? She's got a knife on her, this wicked blade. But Rick winds up seeing that she went outside the fence, and they have this thing, this wheels that were spinning to kind of distract the walkers to keep them over by them. But they heard her clanking on this hose over and over again, so they all start coming at her. I don't know, 8 or 10 of them, whatever. Rick's running like hell, and he's seeing visions of what happened with Lori, back in season 3 when he couldn't get to her in time, and he's trying to get through the fences. And there was really some kind of really cool kills and action scene as far as, because everybody likes to see the walkers get killed too. And Carol really held her own and busted a couple of them up. And this was really, too, I think, a turning point as well, because not only did Rick beat the living fuck out of Tyrese, but Rick went and drew his gun and actually had to use it. He shot 2 or 3 walkers outside the fence to save Carol. And then, of course, it was kind of a stupid thing that she did, too. But her whole thing is that, you know what, it was stupid. And he's like, I thought we were going to wait till tomorrow. And he's like, she goes, you know what, there may not be a tomorrow. Because obviously everything they've worked to build is now crumbling down. And you see how this affects people because everybody's sick, everybody's dying. So then there's also, before we get the group winds up going out, and there's some other banter back and forth and some stuff with Tyrese. Basically he's just really upset, wants to have the killer come to justice and find who it was that, that pulled these people out, one of them being his girlfriend, and then, of course, killed them and burned their bodies. Herschel, who's in quarantine, winds up going and sneaking out. Carl's also supposed to be in quarantine because he is separated from the rest of the people in a different cell block or administrative offices, wherever they are. So Herschel goes, and Carl catches him going out, and Herschel's like, I'm old enough, I can do whatever the hell I want. And Carl's like, well, that's fine, I'm going to come with you. So now he just got his gun back from Rick, and Rick told him early in the episode, only use it if you need to, blah, blah, blah. And this next part where they went out and Herschel was gathering some plants, some berries, something, right, for some medicine, some tea that he was going to make to try to help people bring their fevers down and everything, which we get to in a minute. But when they go out, they wind up coming upon, Carl sees a tent, and basically Herschel, what happens is Herschel talks about how nice and safe and quiet it feels out there, and Carl goes and sees this walker laying pretty much like half grown into a tree that looks like it had died and turned from this flu or whatever, and they're near a tent. As he goes over and goes to raise his gun to put it down, because Herschel says, okay, we'll get it over with, right? They turn and they see another one coming, and you're thinking, oh man, they're going to get surrounded. It's not what happens, but what happens here is there's a moral to this story. This walker has a bear trap on her leg, and it basically is just like limping, lumbering towards them. She couldn't catch them. I mean, even with Herschel's one-legged ass, he's got his prosthetic, he's good to go, right? And so Herschel goes and tells him, no, you don't need to shoot him. And it's not about wasting bullets or anything like that. It's about having the restraint to not kill everything that you see. You cannot ever get to a point, even in a world like this, to where it's acceptable to just kill without thinking, to just kill on instinct, to kill. You have to kill out of necessity to live, okay? That's what I got from it anyway. So then we wind up seeing, and this is really kind of cool as far as I'm concerned, the next section of this here, and I haven't read far enough in the comics, but apparently there was something that alluded to this. Tyrese decides to go with, as well as that guy Bob Stuckey, the guy that I don't trust quite yet, and he was the guy with the liquor problem, the alcohol problem, that had everything, the shelf fall on him in the first episode. Tyrese and Bob decide to go with Michonne and Daryl, right? And there's also an exchange between Daryl and Michonne where he's like, listen, Michonne, you got to stop running away. She's like, I'm not running away. You know, you call that running away? She's on the governor's trail, right? Now, Daryl's like, that trail went cold a while ago. You know, just stop it. You know, if there was anything to it, I'd come out with you and do it. So he's basically calling her out, like, on her just, you know, her inability to mesh with other people, right? Whatever her deal is. So the four of them set out in this car, and they took that kid Zach's car, the one that got eaten, Beth's boyfriend, in the first episode. And he's got a nice car, I guess, you know, and it's going to get him to 50 miles, which is far because when you run into walkers, roadblocks, whatever, right? 50 miles is a journey in this world. So they get in a car, and they're on their way, you know, to it, and they go and they're talking, Michonne and Daryl, a little bit, and Daryl asks her to put a CD in, and all of a sudden he's flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden they start to get a little bit of reception, right, in the radio. Now, this is a zombie apocalypse. There's nobody on the damn radio, right? So they're trying to tune in, looking down, and they kind of hear something. They hear something that sounds like maybe Sanctuary, maybe where, you know, I don't know exactly. I had to rewind it a couple of times in the DVR, and I still couldn't get exactly what they were saying. But there's somebody broadcasting. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're safe, quarantine, Sanctuary, safety, something like that. As this is happening, Daryl goes and looks up, and all of a sudden there's a fucking sound. He's, whoa, he's swerving. Oh, he's swerving, right? And then he's boom, boom, you know, he hits a couple of them. Then all of a sudden he just flat out stops, right? And they kind of zoom around from the back of the car, pointing to the back of the car, around to the front. And as they do, you see zombies. And then it pans out. And then you literally see like fucking 10,000 zombies, okay? I mean, just overtaking the entire roadway, the side all the way through the trees. A mega super herd of zombies, right? Not 100, not 200, thousands. So Daryl goes and hits it, puts it in reverse, says, hang on, everybody, you know. and he goes and backs up, and he starts running them over. Eventually, it winds up getting to be a pile of them behind the car, and the back back passenger wheel actually goes up on a bunch of zombies. There's this one that's laying there trying to flail, and he's spinning the wheel. They're caught on the zombies, right? So then he goes and he's like, and a lot of people probably saw part of this scene in some of the previews and stuff for season 4. But he's like, all right, listen, you know, it's thin enough over here. We can jump out. We can take out the ones that are just in our way, and we got to get to the woods, right? So Michonne and Daryl get out, man, like gangbusters. And Michonne's got that katana, man, and she is just a wicked, wicked woman, man. I swear to God, I'd love to marry her in a zombie apocalypse and have her protecting my ass, because she's just fucking, and I mean, just swinging this thing like Conan, right? And heads are flying off everywhere. Daryl's doing his thing with the crossbow. He whips a knife into a zombie, kicks one of them, right? That guy Bob gets out. He's shooting him. He turns around. Tyrese is still sitting in the car. Everybody's yelling, Tyrese, what are you doing? Bob's, come on, and he's shooting, you know. And I mean, there's literally zombies everywhere. This is not like a few. There's like dozens of them just piling everywhere. So Tyrese is just sitting there, and I think he just gave up. I think he was like, you know what? Sasha, his sister, is sick. So she's in quarantine. That's why he decided to go get the medicine and everything and go with it. Karen, who he was falling in love with, has died. He feels like he's just going to let the zombies take him. All of a sudden, at the last minute, he just comes out of the car and he's just like, fuck this shit, you know? And that's what I'm thinking he was saying. And he's got his trademark hammer, like from the comic books, and he just... And I mean, he is getting overtaken by these things, and I'm just waiting for one of them to bite into him, and I'm thinking, man, somebody's going to take out Tyrese, and Tyrese just got good. But they do that shit in this show all the time, where somebody just gets good, and then they kill him. And he just... You know, and then it goes and it cuts to commercial, man, and he looks like he got overtaken, and everybody had to go and leave. They had to run off. There's zombies still chasing them. We come back from commercial, and we wind up, you know, they're on the other side of this grove or whatever. And Daryl pulls up his crossbow to aim because he hears a couple of zombies, and they're lumbering out of the woods. And as they lumber out of the woods, Tyrese comes up and bludgeons one of them. And I mean, he's literally so exhausted from swinging his fucking hammer and killing so many of these, like probably 30 or 40, I don't know, that he just like collapses, right? Daryl runs over to him after he takes out the other ones with him, and they help, and him and that guy Bob help him up, and they go running off. So whatever's going to happen to them, now their car is gone, we presume. You know, now they're dodging this mega herd. Man, this is crazy stuff. So the end of the show, though, right, is the real bomb, and that's what I loved, and that's what I was waiting to get to. I was telling you about how Carol was going off the rails in the crazy train. Everybody was wondering, who's feeding the zombies with the rats? We still don't know. I still think it's one of the kids. However, you know, at the end of the last episode, when it was like who burned the bodies, I really didn't put a lot of thought into it because a lot of people are like, it's that guy Bob, and I'm like, that's too obvious. He's a new guy. A lot of people say that this character was a part of the governor's, you know, crew in the comic book and everything else. And again, I haven't read that far to know either way. So I just didn't put much thought into it. I was like, whatever. The people were probably sick and gonna die anyway. So you know, and that was my theory on it, right? But Rick was kind of going and looking and investigating throughout the course of the episode. And he wound up seeing on the door leading out to that courtyard where there was the blood drag behind, it looked like blood, like a bloody handprint on there, like somebody was still alive when they were pulled out there and then burned, you know? They're struggling maybe, I don't know. That's what I thought it was, right? So all of a sudden we see Rick, and he's talking to Carol about how that was a stupid thing she did, and she's like, yeah, it was, and blah, blah. And he goes, you know, I know you really care for the group, and you really want things to go well for everybody. And you remember she was the one that was telling the little girl to man up in the last episode, and she's teaching kids how to use knives and everything. So I think she's gone a little bit off the rails, right? But then all of a sudden, and this is the last thing I ever expected, Rick goes and he's just like, you're the one that killed Karen and David and burned their bodies, aren't you? And he kind of said it to her like, you know, to protect the group, because that's what her mindset was behind that, right? She turns all cold, Carol, and looks at him, man. And she looked like Jamie Lee Curtis from the Activia yogurt things. And she turns and looks at him and just says, yeah, I did. And I'm like, what? Carol killed the people and burned the bodies and dragged them out? God damn, you know? So to me, that was a huge revelation because it was the last person I ever thought of. I mean, I would have said almost anybody on the show before Carol. I guess I just didn't expect that she had it in her. And what I'm thinking is these people were sick, right? Karen and David. And she went into their cells, each one of them, because they trusted her. And I think she bludgeoned one of them, you know, to take them out silently. And then I think the other one struggled, and that's why she had problems with one of them. Because they obviously, there was no gunshots fired, so she had to have stabbed them and done something close quarters. If they were already zombies, then here's the deal. Even if she tried to drag them out and burn their zombie bodies so they wouldn't infect anybody else, because that was the whole idea, to quarantine, to make sure the infection didn't spread. But the infection did spread, right? But if that was her goal and her thought, when Tyrese at the beginning of the show was out there yelling in the air, she would have been like, they were zombies. I killed them, I shot them or stabbed them and burned their bodies. They were alive, okay? So that's my thing. That's the end of the shit. That's the bomb that got dropped on us. So for all of those of you who do watch, excuse me, I can't even talk over here, brothers and sisters, my episode question is, who did you think actually burned the bodies? You know what I mean? Did you see that coming with Carol? And then also, my question is, who do you think's on the radio? So leave your answers to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it. And subscribe if you haven't done so already, because we're going to be doing this every week. We'll look forward to catching you in the next one, Nation.
Thank you, as always, for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one, Nation. Fucking zombies.